You know someone right now. Maybe it's a coworker, maybe it's that one friend from college, who barely seems to be trying. Yet everything they touch turns to gold, every door swings open, every lucky break lands right in their lap, and meanwhile you're over here grinding yourself into dust. Losing sleep, skipping meals, pushing harder than you've ever pushed, and somehow you still trip over your own shoelaces. Somehow the universe still finds a way to slap you right when you think you're about to catch a break. And if you've ever laid in bed staring at the ceiling at 2 in the morning wondering what the hell is wrong with you, wondering if you were just born under the wrong star or if maybe success was a members only club and nobody gave you the invitation, then I need you to lean in close right now, because what I'm about to share with you over the next several minutes is going to rip apart everything you thought you knew about luck, talent, and why some people's lives just seem to work while yours feels like it's stuck in quicksand. After 15 years of studying thousands of successful people, entrepreneurs who built empires from nothing, athletes who came back from career-ending injuries, everyday people who went from food stamps to financial freedom, I discovered that the difference between those whose lives flow and those whose lives stay stuck has absolutely nothing to do with luck, nothing to do with intelligence, nothing to do with being born into the right family or knowing the right people, and everything to do with something so deceptively simple that most people completely overlook it: the invisible algorithms running inside your subconscious mind, which is really just a fancy way of saying your habits. And not the habits you think I'm talking about, like waking up early or reading 30 pages a day. No, I'm talking about 7 specific, almost hidden behavioral patterns that fundamentally rewire how your brain processes reality itself. And by the time you finish reading this, your brain will literally begin operating on a different circuit than the one it's running on right now. So let's cut the fluff and dive straight into the deep end. The first secret habit of people whose lives just seem to work is their relationship with language. And I don't mean they're well-spoken or articulate in meetings. I mean they have cracked the code on how words function as direct commands to the human brain. Because here's something neuroscience has confirmed over and over again: your brain is essentially a hyper-obedient computer that takes every single thing you say, out loud or in your head, as a literal instruction manual for how to construct your reality. So when you mutter under your breath, "I'm so done. I can't take this anymore. This is killing me," your brain doesn't interpret that as a figure of speech. It interprets it as a command and immediately begins flooding your system with cortisol and adrenaline, essentially building the biochemical infrastructure of the very death and destruction you just described. And on the flip side, when someone in that exact same situation says, "Okay, what can I learn from this? What's the hidden advantage here?" their prefrontal cortex lights up like a Christmas tree, and their brain shifts into problem-solving mode, actively scanning the environment for solutions and opportunities that were invisible just seconds before. And I know what you're thinking, because I thought the same thing for years. You're thinking this is just that positive thinking nonsense. Just stand in front of your mirror and tell yourself you're a millionaire and magically the money appears, right? But that's not what I'm talking about at all, because your subconscious mind is incredibly sophisticated. It can smell a lie from a mile away. So if you're drowning in debt and you try to convince yourself, "I am wealthy, I am abundant," your brain will reject that command faster than your body rejects bad sushi. And what people whose lives work actually do is something far more subtle and far more powerful. They speak in what I call neutral possibility language, which means instead of saying, "I can't do this," they say, "I haven't figured this out yet." Instead of saying, "This is impossible," they say, "What would it look like if this were possible?" Instead of saying, "I'm broke," they say, "My financial situation is currently under construction." And that might sound like a small semantic difference, but it is the difference between your brain shutting down all creative problem-solving circuits and your brain opening up every neural pathway it has to find a way forward. And let me tell you a story that perfectly illustrates this, because I knew a guy named Mike in Dallas, Texas, who was $500,000 in debt. His restaurant had failed. His marriage was on the rocks. And one night I'm sitting with him at a diner and the food is taking forever to come out, and instead of complaining, he looks at me with this grin and says, "Man, this place is so packed they can barely keep up. That's exactly where my next business is going to be. So busy we can't serve people fast enough. Consider this a preview. And I remember thinking this guy is either delusional or he knows something I don't, and 3 years later he had built the fastest growing franchise in his region. And when I asked him how he did it, he said it started with that exact moment, that decision to frame every single experience, even waiting for a plate of eggs, as evidence that his future success was already on its way. And if you want to start applying this today, here's exactly what to do. For the next 7 days, consciously eliminate the words can't, never, impossible, hate, and killing me from your vocabulary. And every single time a negative statement slips out, immediately append the word, but followed by a reframe. So today was exhausting, but that means I showed up and gave everything I had. And tonight I'm going to sleep like a champion. Or instead of saying, well, that was a disaster, try, oh, that's interesting, what's the lesson hiding in there? And I promise you that within 1 week your brain will start automatically scanning for opportunities instead of threats. But here's the thing, you can program the most beautiful software in the world, but if the hardware is corrupted, nothing runs, which brings us to the second secret habit, environment design, and this one is going to challenge everything you believe about willpower and discipline, because people whose lives work have a dirty little secret. They don't trust their own willpower, not even a little bit. And the reason is because they understand something that most people don't. Willpower is not a character trait, it's a battery. And just like your phone battery, it starts full in the morning and drains steadily throughout the day. Every time you make a decision, resist a temptation, or force yourself to focus on something boring, and by 3 in the afternoon most people's willpower battery is hovering around 8%, which is exactly why you can eat perfectly all day and then demolish an entire sleeve of Oreos at 10 p.m. It's not because you're weak. It's because your battery died, and successful people know this. So instead of relying on a resource that is guaranteed to fail them, they engineer their environment so that the right behaviors require 0 willpower and the wrong behaviors require enormous effort. And the principle behind this is something physicists would call friction. You want to reduce friction to near 0 for everything you want to do and increase friction to maximum for everything you want to avoid. So if you want to work out in the morning, you sleep in your gym clothes with your sneakers right next to the bed, so that when your alarm goes off, the path of least resistance is literally to walk out the door and start exercising. And if you want to stop scrolling your phone at night, you plug it in to charge in another room. And if you want to eat healthier, you don't keep a single piece of junk food in your house, so that at 10 p.m. when your willpower is dead and the craving hits, you'd have to get dressed, drive to the store, and buy the junk food, and that friction is usually enough to make you grab an apple instead. And I knew a woman named Sarah in Chicago who had failed the bar exam twice and was convinced she just wasn't smart enough. But when we looked at her study environment, she had her TV in the same room as her desk. Her phone was always within arm's reach, and her roommate was constantly inviting her out for drinks. So we redesigned everything. The TV went into storage. Her phone went into a timed lockbox during study hours. She started using a specific candle scent that she only lit when studying, so her brain began associating that smell with deep focus. And she moved her study sessions to a quiet library where the social pressure of other people working kept her locked in. And 6 months later, she didn't just pass the bar. She scored in the top 15%. And it wasn't because she suddenly got smarter. It was because she stopped fighting her environment and started designing it. And the most important environmental change you can make, and I cannot stress this enough, is auditing the people in your life, because human beings are neurological sponges. We literally absorb the emotional states, beliefs, and behaviors of the people we spend the most time with through mirror neurons in our brains. So if you're spending your weekends with people who complain constantly, who gossip, who are cynical about everything, who drain your energy every time you see them, you are downloading their operating system directly into your subconscious, whether you realize it or not. And the single most powerful environmental change you can make is to reduce your exposure to energy vampires and increase your proximity to people who are where you want to be or who are actively working to get there. Now, once your language is upgraded and your environment is engineered, the third secret habit kicks in, and it's all about how you start your morning, specifically the first 5 minutes after you open your eyes. Because those 5 minutes are the most neurologically vulnerable and therefore the most powerful moments of your entire day. Your brain is transitioning from theta wave sleep state into waking consciousness. And whatever input it receives during that transition essentially sets the operating frequency for the next 16 hours. So when most people reach for their phone the instant they wake up, they are immediately flooding their theta state brain with other people's emergencies. Social media comparison, news headlines designed to trigger fear and outrage, and their brain locks into a reactive, defensive mode for the rest of the day before they've even gotten out of bed. And people whose lives work do the exact opposite. They protect those first 5 minutes like a dragon guards its treasure. And the very first thing they do, and this is going to sound almost insultingly simple, is make their bed. And before you roll your eyes, hear me out, because there is actual neuroscience behind this. When you feel like nothing in your life is within your control, when the world feels chaotic and you feel powerless, making your bed is one thing that is 100% within your power. It takes 30 seconds, and it gives your brain its first small win of the day. And that small win triggers a release of dopamine, which creates what psychologists call the winner effect. A neurological cascade where one small success primes your brain to seek and achieve the next success and the next one after that. And then you drink a full glass of water because your brain has been dehydrated for 8 hours, and dehydration alone can reduce cognitive function by up to 30%. And then you open the curtains and let natural light hit your eyes, because that light triggers your suprachiasmatic nucleus to begin producing serotonin, which is literally the molecule of contentment and well-being, and all of this happens before you ever check a single notification. And this 5-minute morning ritual, bed, water, light, costs nothing, requires no special equipment, and fundamentally changes the trajectory of your entire day. But let's be real, even if you nail your morning routine, life is going to punch you in the face. It's not a matter of if but when. And this is where the fourth habit becomes critical: how you process failure. Because the difference between people whose lives spiral downward after a setback and people who somehow come back stronger every single time is not that the successful ones feel less pain. They feel the exact same amount of pain, the same gut-wrenching disappointment, the same shame, the same fear. The difference is their dwell time, meaning how long they allow themselves to sit in that pain before they convert it into fuel. And the average person who experiences a major failure will spend weeks, months, sometimes years replaying it, marinating in regret, letting it calcify into an identity where they become the person who failed. But people whose lives work treat failure the way a scientist treats a failed experiment. Not as evidence that they're incompetent, but as expensive, high-quality data that they literally could not have obtained any other way. And I'm going to tell you about a guy named Tom in Austin who launched a product that bombed so spectacularly that he lost $1 million in 60 days. And when I talked to him the week after it happened, he told me he gave himself exactly 10 minutes to feel the full weight of it. He went into his bathroom, closed the door, and for 10 minutes he let himself feel every ounce of grief and anger and shame, and then he washed his face, walked out, sat down at his desk, and wrote a document titled The $1 Million Lesson: Everything I Now Know That I Didn't Know 90 Days Ago. And that document became the foundation for his next venture, which generated triple the revenue within 18 months. And he told me later that losing that $1 million was the best investment he ever made because the education it purchased was priceless. And here's how you can apply this right now. The next time something bad happens to you, take out a piece of paper and draw a line down the middle. On the left side, write feelings, and on the right side, write facts. Pour all your emotions onto the left side without censoring anything. And then on the right side, write only the objective, verifiable facts of what happened. And you'll notice something remarkable. The facts are almost always far less catastrophic than the feelings suggest. And then at the bottom of the page, replace the word because of with thanks to. So instead of because of this failure I'm ruined, you write thanks to this failure I now know exactly what not to do, and I know it at a cellular level that no book or course could have taught me. And that single linguistic shift, that reframing from catastrophe to curriculum, is the secret weapon that allows certain people to turn every loss into leverage. Now we move to the fifth habit, which is action architecture. Specifically the art of moving before you think. And this is counterintuitive because we've all been told to think before you act, look before you leap, plan before you execute, but people whose lives work have discovered that overthinking is not preparation. It's procrastination wearing a very convincing disguise, because your brain's primary job is not to make you successful, it's to keep you alive. And the way it keeps you alive is by avoiding anything new, uncertain, or uncomfortable. So the moment you think, I should start that business, or I should go talk to that person, or I should sign up for that class, your brain immediately launches a counterattack of perfectly logical sounding excuses. You're not ready yet. You need more research. The timing isn't right. What if you fail? What will people think? And every single one of those excuses feels valid and reasonable, but they are all just your survival brain's attempt to keep you safely inside your comfort zone where nothing bad can happen, but also nothing great can happen either. And the tool that destroys this pattern is what I call the 5-second launch. The moment an impulse to act on something aligned with your goals enters your mind, you count backwards, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and you physically move your body before your brain has time to generate a single excuse. Because neuroscience shows that there's a roughly 5-second window between the initial impulse and the brain's activation of the fear and excuse-generating circuits. And if you move within that window, you've essentially bypassed your own self-sabotage system. And this doesn't mean you act recklessly on every impulse. It means that when you know what you should do and the only thing stopping you is fear or laziness, you launch before the resistance kicks in. And stop waiting until you feel ready, because that feeling never comes. Readiness is not a feeling, it's a decision, and perfectionism, the need to have everything figured out before you start, is not a virtue, it's fear of failure wearing a tuxedo. So if you're 70% prepared, that's enough. Go, launch, begin, start, and correct course as you move, because a plane is off course 90% of the flight and still lands at the right destination because it constantly adjusts. And if you can't even get yourself to start the whole thing, negotiate with yourself to commit to just 2 minutes. 2 minutes of writing, 2 minutes of exercising, 2 minutes of working on your project. Because what happens almost every time is that once you're in motion, the resistance dissolves and you end up going for 30 minutes or an hour, because the hardest part was never the doing, it was the starting. Now, the 6th habit is one that most people dismiss as soft or woo-woo, but it is backed by hard neuroscience, and it is the single most underrated performance-enhancing tool available to any human being on the planet: strategic gratitude. And I don't mean gratitude in the be thankful for your blessings motivational poster sense. I mean gratitude as a deliberate neurological optimization strategy, because when you experience genuine gratitude, even for something as trivial as your morning coffee tasting good or hitting all green lights on your commute, your brain releases a cocktail of serotonin and dopamine that enhances prefrontal cortex function, which is the part of your brain responsible for planning, decision-making, creative problem-solving, and impulse control, and it simultaneously suppresses the amygdala, which is the part of your brain responsible for fear, anxiety, and threat detection. So gratitude literally makes you smarter, more creative, and less anxious all at the same time. And there's a deeper mechanism at work here involving something called the reticular activating system, which is essentially the filter in your brain that decides what information from the millions of bits of data hitting your senses every second actually gets promoted to your conscious awareness. And this filter is trained by repetition. So if you spend most of your time focusing on problems, complaints, and what's going wrong, your RAS learns that negative information is important and begins filtering your reality to show you more of it, which is why negative people always seem to find more things to be negative about. It's not that their life is worse. It's that their brain is literally programmed to spot the bad stuff. And gratitude reverses this by training your RAS to prioritize positive information, which means opportunities, connections, solutions, and lucky breaks that were always there but were invisible to you suddenly start appearing everywhere. And the practice is stupidly simple. Every night before bed, write down 3 specific things from that day that you're grateful for, and they have to be specific. Not, I'm grateful for my family, but I'm grateful that my daughter laughed so hard at dinner that milk came out of her nose, because it reminded me that joy is always available even on hard days. And within 2 to 3 weeks of doing this consistently, you will begin noticing a tangible shift in what your brain shows you throughout the day. And the 7th and final habit is what ties everything together and makes the other 6 sustainable, and that is the discipline of learning and recording, building a feedback loop through what psychologists call metacognition, which is simply the practice of thinking about your own thinking. And here is the uncomfortable truth: an unexamined life doesn't just go unlived, it goes in circles, because without regular honest assessment of what you tried, what worked, what failed, and what you'll adjust, you are doomed to repeat the same mistakes in increasingly frustrating cycles. And the most successful people I've ever studied all share one trait that has nothing to do with charisma or intelligence. They all keep some form of daily log. And it doesn't need to be a beautifully journaled diary with calligraphy and washi tape. It can be 3 lines scrawled on a napkin, as long as those 3 lines answer 3 questions. What did I attempt today? What was the result? And what will I do differently tomorrow? Because those 3 questions create a feedback loop that allows you to course correct in real time, instead of waking up 5 years from now wondering where the time went and why you're still stuck in the same place. And Benjamin Franklin himself kept a nightly record where he reviewed his own conduct against 13 virtues he had set for himself. And every night he confronted where he had fallen short with ruthless honesty. And that nightly practice of self-confrontation is what transformed a runaway teenager from Boston into one of the most influential human beings in American history. And if you want to start this today, just take 5 minutes at the end of your day to write down what you did in rough hourly blocks. Not to judge yourself, but to see yourself clearly. And then write one single sentence completing this prompt. Tomorrow I will be 1% better by. And fill in one concrete, specific action. And over the course of a year, that 1% daily improvement compounds into a version of you that is 365% evolved from where you started. And let me bring all of this together, because I know I've thrown a lot at you. Your life is not a slot machine where you pull the lever and hope for the best. Your life is an engineering project, and the blueprints are these 7 habits. Speak in the language of possibility. Design your environment so the right choices are effortless. Protect your first 5 minutes every morning. Convert failure into high-value data. Move within 5 seconds before resistance kills your momentum. Practice gratitude as a neurological optimization tool. And build a daily feedback loop through honest recording. And right now, the moment you finish this, I want you to do one tiny thing to prove to your brain that you are a person of action. Pick up one piece of clutter near you, a cup, a wrapper, a pen out of place, anything, and put it exactly where it belongs. And as you do it, say to yourself, either out loud or silently, my transformation starts right here. Because that one micro-action, that one moment of choosing order over chaos, sends a signal to your subconscious mind that you are no longer a passenger in your own life. You are the architect. And that signal will ripple outward into every decision you make for the rest of this day, and the day after that, and the day after that, until one morning you'll wake up and realize that your life isn't just working, it's flowing. And the people around you will look at you and wonder how you got so lucky, and you'll smile knowing it was never luck at all. It was design, it was habit, it was the quiet daily engineering of a life built not on hope but on structure, not on wishes but on systems, not on chance but on choice. And you were always capable of this. Every single day of your life you had this power sitting dormant inside you. The only thing that was missing was the awareness that your habits are not just things you do. They are the architecture of your destiny, and now you have that awareness. So go build something extraordinary with it.